This is Viterbi Voices, the podcast, your chance to hear stories about research, classes, student life, and more directly from our faculty, students, and other members of the engineering community here at the University of Southern California.
This is episode 109. Tune in for an exciting episode about the Maseeh Entrepreneurship Prize Competition, where students within Viterbi tackled some of the 14 grand challenges identified by the National Academy of Engineering.
Welcome back into Viterbi Voices. This is episode
109.
109. As usual, I am one of your hosts. My name is Paul Ledesma, Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
And my name is Ria Chowdhury. I'm a senior studying biomedical engineering here at USC.
And my name is Shuntaro Nishi, and I'm a senior studying chemical engineering.
So, Shuntaro, you come back to us with another episode. What is this episode all about?
Yeah, so this episode is all about the Maseeh Entrepreneurship Prize Competition, or what we like to call MEPC.
Yeah.
And it's just this focus on Viterbi students getting involved with an entrepreneurship challenge, about what the grand challenges are all about taking what you learn in classrooms and applying it out into the real world. And so I interviewed two teams, one Marlink, which is focusing on communication with automated underwater vehicles, and then the other one, MuscleMeter. So that one is testing rotation strength of upper shoulder and upper leg to predict the onset of muscle degenerative diseases. So
Okay. So to take a couple steps back, the MEPC, it's a entrepreneurial prize competition that our engineering students participate in annually. And you interviewed two different teams?
Mm-hmm.
And how many teams total do you know are in the competition right now?
I think there's around 8 teams.
8 teams?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And do you know where we are in the timeline as far as how many applied, or because there's a selection process and
Mm-hmm.
what happens to this whole thing?
Yeah, so from my interviews with them, I kind of got that in the fall semester, you're more creating your pitch for the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Then you kind of get accepted around October, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then currently right now they're working on customer discovery. So they actually get a grant from the Maseeh Entrepreneurship Prize Competition to conduct research, talk with current researchers, and talk with current people within that certain industry. So the automated underwater vehicle team is talking with drilling companies to understand how they can create these communication probes to communicate with these automated underwater vehicles. So they're currently in that phase right now. They're also getting mentorship from a mentor within that certain industry. So they get to talk to them. They get to talk about how they're going to develop their program, how they can shift their project into more of a customer product rather than just a research product.
Okay, cool. And why was this of interest to you? Why did you choose this as something you wanted to learn more about?
Yeah, so I think just learning, just talking to different Viterbi students, getting involved with things that are just, I think, because when you talk to the Marlink team, they're full of mechanical engineers. And I think it's easy within college sometimes to just let that be limited within the classroom, and to see them really take this idea of an automated underwater vehicle under Antarctic ice sheets and want to go into this project, not really knowing that much, but understanding that they can learn throughout that process of just applying into it is something that I thought was absolutely amazing. So I think just kind of a little bit out of curiosity that I just wanted to talk to them about their projects,
Sure.
How they got there, what's the motivation behind it. So.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this is our second episode in a row related to entrepreneurship.
Yeah. The episode that we published this morning actually was Daniel Donchev's with Professor Trina Gregory, who is the Associate Director of the Entrepreneurship Center. But we also talked about this competition in brief. This one was a lot more in-depth with actual project teams and people doing it, which is really cool. And MEPC is the competition that I did my sophomore year. Which we talked about on the last episode as well in the intro. But it was an amazing experience.
I was having deja vu. I was like,
hang on,
Like when you started talking, I was like,
no, this was completely coincidence. But now we're doing a little entrepreneurship series.
I just thought I was really tired and had to have my coffee. I was like, I feel like we've done this before.
Nope, it's just, it happens to work out that way. But it's cool because a lot of people are really interested in entrepreneurship right now. And
Totally.
I think it's a really exciting field to talk about, and one that a lot of Viterbi students are really excited about too.
Absolutely. I also think it's somewhat of a misnomer, or maybe, I don't know, it's an assumption that people make that entrepreneurship is tied to computer science for some reason.
Yeah.
I think it's not necessarily here at USC, obviously, but I think from high school students that CS students think entrepreneurially, or they think that that's the path to entrepreneurship because it's such a a low barrier to entry to create an app that is a business, for lack of a better term, and doing something else is it's far more broad. There's more things that are happening, and I think what's cool, like as in the last episode, there are lots of opportunities, and we can now dive deep into the Maseeh Entrepreneurial Prize competition, which is a really unique competition for an engineering school to have. These types of competitions are very common in business schools, but that's what's so cool about this one, is that this is purely for the engineering students, which is great.
Yeah, and it's cool because both of the teams that he talked to are doing very hardware-oriented projects, which is totally different than what you were talking about with the apps and the computer science stuff. Both of these are like very technical projects using things that these students have learned in the classroom for the last 4 years or last 3 years. So it's really, really interesting to hear how they've done that and like built actual tangible devices with them.
Totally. Are you guys staying warm?
You know, I'm getting a little bit sick, honestly, because my body is not used to 40-degree temperatures. But, you know,
this morning when I woke up, it was 37 degrees.
Yeah, it was 41 when I woke up.
Yeah, growing up in Southern California, I'm not used to this kind of weather, and it's kind of weird. It's been really cold this winter.
It's been very cold.
Yeah, it's rained a lot.
So. I don't think it's unfair for us to say it's been very cold. It's been very cold. Like usually, very
objectively cold. Yeah.
For very cold for us is like it dipped into the high 50s. You know, like that's usually where people complain about Southern Californians. But like now it's like no, it's in the 30s at night.
It's actually objectively cold now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it won't last long, but as we could say, it was super cold today.
I know, it's going to be like 80 degrees next week.
Stay tuned for next week.
All right, guys. Well, let's get it out of the way. And
wait, before we do that, though, because this is Shuntaro's first time back, we have quick-fire questions now.
Daniel told me about this.
Oh, no, they're not a surprise. Okay, then I'm going to ask you different questions than him.
Yes, these are our quick-fire lightning round questions. You got them?
Yeah, I got them. So we're not going to time you, but you have to answer them as quickly as possible. Okay. Texting or talking?
Texting.
Favorite day of the week?
Thursday.
Thursday?
Yeah, love Thursdays.
Favorite city in the U.S. besides the one you live in?
Irvine, California.
I feel like you live in Irvine.
Okay, I'll go with Austin, Texas.
Nickname your parents used to call you?
Shunko.
Last song you downloaded?
Ooh, I have Spotify. I guess Spotify download.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
First song that comes to mind.
Last song you listened to?
I'm not really good at this. I'm going to edit this whole silence part out. I guess it was probably the James Blake album.
Would you rather be able to speak every language in the world or be able to talk to animals?
Speak every language in the world.
Favorite holiday?
This is a contentious one, but I like 4th of July a lot.
Why is it contentious?
Some people get really upset at me because they're like, you got to either be Christmas or just Thanksgiving, but I love it in the summer. You have pool barbecues. I feel like you've gotten into like
some serious fights about this. You're like, the facial I
feel like we've had a fight about this. I was like, 4th of July is like a weird holiday as a favorite.
It's awesome.
I don't know.
It's summer. It's barbecues. There's fireworks.
I don't know. I guess also the last...
Rhea
with the
hates
exception,
America. Rhea hates America.
I was just going to say, with the exception of last summer when I was in Irvine, California, the last like 4 or 5 4th of Julys, I wasn't in America. I was like traveling.
Oh, so you don't really
so I, like,
have a memory of it.
Yeah, I haven't had like
a
adult 4th of July. Yeah.
Where is your 4th of July typically when you're in Irvine?
So we used
to go to Newport?
No, so we actually used to just go to one of my friends'
then you don't know.
Backyards, yeah. And then we used to play pool basketball. And that's just, it's a very fond memory of mine.
How long does it take you to get ready?
To wake up and get ready?
Just as to get ready.
30 minutes.
Scale of 1 to 10, how good of a driver are you?
8.
Fill in the blank. Taylor Swift is...
22 at one point.
I hope she was. That's awesome.
I was going to just say 22, and I was like, wait, that song came out a couple of years ago. That's probably not true.
That was like 8 years ago or something. At what age do you want to retire?
Ooh. Like 65?
Invisibility or super strength?
Invisibility.
Is it wrong for a vegetarian to eat animal crackers?
No.
That's it. That's our lightning round.
You're so pained to answer those questions. Like the look on your face. It's like life or death. Like someone had you hooked up to something.
Daniel must have given him a really aggressive
Daniel
warning.
was just like focused, like a laser.
Daniel was like chocolate.
He was like so intense in this, and like you were just like it was hurting you to be asked these questions.
That was good. That's it.
All right, now let's get out of the way. Give it back over to you for this entrepreneurial prize competition.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shuntaro Nishi. I'm a senior studying chemical engineering from Irvine, California. In this Viterbi Life episode, we'll be talking to some amazing Viterbi students who are representing their MEPC team. The Viterbi School of Engineering runs the annual Maseeh Entrepreneurship Prize Competition, MEPC, to inspire current Viterbi students to channel their entrepreneurship spirit. Throughout the process, each MEPC team will receive funding to conduct customer discovery and utilize legal services. And finally, the winning team is offered the grand prize of $50,000 to launch their startup. In this interview, we will talk with Siena, who is representing Marlink, a high-speed underwater communication system for automated underwater vehicles under Antarctic ice sheets to enable longer, more cost-effective exploration missions. And Nash, who's representing MuscleMeter, a physical brace designed to measure muscular health in the upper arms and legs to predict the onset of diseases like ALS. These companies tackle two completely different challenges through using the innovation brought forward by some amazing Viterbi students. Now let's get on to the episode and hear from Siena about her company, Marlink.
Yeah, sure. My name's Siena Applebaum. I'm a mechanical engineering major. I'm a junior, and I'm from Santa Barbara, California.
Very cool. So your team is involved with the MEPC program. So can you tell us a little bit about the project that your team has been working on for like the past semester?
Yeah, sure. It's a little technical, but my team is called Marlink. Kind of in a sentence, we're an under-ice communication system that will enable better communication between AUVs that are submerged and researchers above the ice in the Antarctic region, which can allow for longer and more cost-effective missions. A little bit more background, I guess. Because that's pretty technical. But one of the most difficult and unresolved challenges related to AUVs, which are autonomous underwater vehicles, is communication. Basically, right now, how communication with AUVs work is that they're deployed and they go and they take data, and then they need to be resurfaced in order for the data to be analyzed and for researchers to have access to that data. And in Antarctic and Arctic operations, where there's ice sheet layers between the AUVs and the researchers, that can be really costly and time intensive because you need to re-drill a hole for the AUVs to resurface. So essentially our idea is a communication necklace. So a set of nodes with a fiber optic cable in between them, with one node above the surface that researchers have access to, and one node below the ice sheet surface that the AUVs have access to. And the AUVs will be able to dock and charge themselves on the underwater node, and also communicate and transmit data to the underwater node. And that data will then be transferred through the fiber optic cable up to the researchers. One thing I guess that was pretty cool, the other week we were talking to some AUV researchers, and someone mentioned that we actually know less about the water underneath the Antarctic ice sheets than we do about the moon, which is pretty crazy. And it just goes to show how difficult research in these really intense climates is.
And so you briefly mentioned that you talked to some AUV researchers. How has that process been within the MEPC Challenge, where you've been talking to certain researchers and professors about your project, and how your project began and how it's kind of developed to the stage that it is now?
Yeah, so our product has developed a lot over the course of the past couple months. As you can probably imagine, none of my team members were incredibly well-versed in how communication between AUVs works. That's not something you learn in the classroom necessarily, or if it is, I want to sign up for that class. But so one thing that's pretty cool about the Maseeh Entrepreneurship competition is that they require you to do customer discovery, and they actually gave us a stipend to do that to customer discovery. So for the past couple months, we've been reaching out to different researchers, AUV manufacturers, different people that operate in this kind of space, even like Antarctic like drill operators. And from them, we've learned so much. We've figured out that so many of our previous and initial ideas didn't work at all, or there was actually so many different ways, so many different things we could add to our ideas to make them more feasible. For example, one thing we learned was before we were planning on deploying these in the Antarctic and in the Arctic, but we didn't really understand how in the Arctic there's these sea ice sheets that are constantly moving, which actually makes our product not super feasible. So because we learned that, we pivoted to just working in the Antarctic.
Obviously, Southern California is nothing like the Arctic or the Antarctic. Like, how did you guys get this idea to create AUVs or this communication system for a terrain that is so foreign to people in Southern California?
Well, I guess a little bit of background just in general about how we came to this idea. I have to give a shout out to one of my roommates and best friends, Roxy Pakar. She's an electrical engineering major here, also a junior. And over the past summer, she worked at JPL. And she was working with drones, but there was this continuous running joke whenever the drones weren't working that, they should actually just pivot to AUVs. So that's something that had been in the back of her mind for a while. And one day she listened to a talk about communication and AUV exploration of the water on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. And that's, I think, kind of where this idea started to come from. She immediately talked to me and our other roommates about, her ideas about that and about how we could potentially address the communication issues for AUVs under ice. And so coming back to school, we started talking more about that and more about how we could potentially engineer some solution to address that challenge. And then I guess we kind of decided, why not go for it? Why not try to make it happen? Why not try to enter the competition and see how far we could take it?
Yeah. And what are some of the biggest takeaways you've gotten from this competition? Just working a couple months on your project, talking to experts within that field. What are some of the things you've learned or gained from this experience?
I mean, I think on a base level, I've learned a lot about AUVs and a lot about communication systems in general, because that isn't something I necessarily knew that much about before starting this project. I think a huge thing I learned was also just that even if you don't have previous experience with the subject matter, for example, myself and many of my roommates didn't know much at all about these topics, it doesn't mean that you can't learn. So that's been one of the most exciting parts of the experience so far, is just that every time we talk to a new potential customer in our customer discovery journey, we learn so much more.
Yeah, and speaking about that customer discovery
Mm-hmm.
Customer discovery part, can you give us like this just like a general timeline of what this MEPC program has just kind of consisted of just maybe the beginning application process and how, that's okay if you don't have the questions or anything, but just how you pitched the idea and where it's progressed since that initial state?
Well, I guess I don't know the exact dates, the exact timeline, but I think applications were due probably maybe mid-October. And so, we submitted kind of like a business proposal, who our main customers were, who our competitors were, that kind of stuff. Probably a couple weeks later, we received the good news that we were finalists, and we were one of, I think, maybe the 16 teams that had the chance to compete in this competition. Shortly after that, we went to this reception where we got to learn about all of the different teams that were competing, and we got matched with an advisor who was awesome and just really helped us kickstart things and get in contact with some other knowledgeable people. After that kind of leads us into probably the December timeframe. So we were going on to winter break, and really over winter break is when we made sure to speak as much as we could with different AUV researchers and different people working in the research that we were interested in.
Cool.
Yeah, I think now we're moving into more of the prototyping stage. So actually, this next week we're working with Resel, which is the Robotics Embedded Systems Laboratory. They have an AUV that we can use, and so we're going to get a watertight enclosure. We're going to put a router in it, attach that to the AUV, drive out to a lake about an hour away with one of the other AUV researchers at USC. And just do some basic testing on data transmission and low-range RF. Yeah, which I'm really excited to do. It's cool because we've been talking so much about our different plans and how things are changing and what the best way to transmit data is and what type of data we would want to transmit. And now we're finally getting to the cool part. Obviously, for engineers, making stuff is the fun part. And we're gonna go out and do it and see how it works.
Yeah, and the data that you're pulling from underneath the ice sheets, like what are you guys looking for in your customers right now? Which customers are looking for this technology to be innovated?
So our main customers, as we understand it, lies in researchers, and there's a lot of interest in research in the Antarctic region. So the type of data they would probably be collecting is maybe underwater life profiling, like fish profiling and photographs and images. Potentially there's a lot of interest in research also on the temperature, the salinity of the water, different properties like that. There's a big application. The Antarctic is rapidly changing because of climate change. So in general, a lot of climate change researchers would be interested in this type of a product. We also, after talking to more researchers, discovered that something we didn't really think about when we came up with this idea, but there's also an application for the defense industry and the oil and gas industry. So that's also something to look into.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we're talking earlier about just how amazing it is how Viterbi students especially really apply their major into real-life applications through challenges like these or through just individual pursuits. What are some other ways during your time at USC that you've really applied your mechanical engineering degree outside of the classroom?
Yeah, definitely. I love my classes here, but some of my favorite experiences have been in working in teams and working on projects outside of the classroom. I think I've really tried to make sure that I get as many experiences outside of the classroom as I could in my time that I've had in my undergraduate career. I guess a great example of that is in the Maseeh Entrepreneurship competition. I've learned so many engineering skills that I wouldn't be able to learn in the classroom. I also, since my freshman year, did research at the USC Combustion Physics Laboratory, where I worked on experimentally studying the effect different stoichiometric mixture fractions have on the propagation of hydrogen flames. I know that's a pretty wordy sentence. And now I'm actually doing research at the Robotics Embedded Systems Laboratory, where I've only worked there for a couple weeks, but I'm working on assembling a mobile manipulator, so like a mobile robotic base and a mobile arm to do various tasks, which is really exciting. I guess another thing that I do is I've been really involved in the 3D printing organization on campus since my freshman year. So through that, I've worked on teams each year in creating a new 3D printed project. My freshman year, a group of people and I worked on creating an automated candy dispenser, which was really cool. It dispensed candy every 20 minutes, and there was little LEDs on there that lit up whenever it was dispensing candy. And then my second year, I worked on creating an automated RC boat, and now I serve on the e-board, which is nice because I get to help other people with their projects. Let's see, what else do I do? I'm also in I guess this is a class, but it is really applied. The class is called Innovation and Engineering Design for Global Challenges, and it's a year-long class. And in the class, we're split into teams, and we're working on innovations to help with the refugee crisis. And so the different teams are all working on very different projects. There's apps, there's warm clothing. My team is working on a portable shower, kind of to restore dignity and to fight the spread of disease in refugee camps. It's cool going to a school where people, I think this is a very Viterbi thing, but all of my peers are very involved and I think doing a lot of really cool things. There's a lot of opportunities to get involved on campus.
Yeah. So I guess those are all our questions for the episode. Our last question is, since a lot of our students that are listening are prospective students, along with current students at USC, what is a piece of advice that you would give these students that are just listening? Maybe they're just entering college, they're applying to colleges right now, and it might be a stressful time. What is a piece of advice that you would give them?
Something I wish I had heard when I was a prospective student or when I was coming into college is that don't put yourself in a box. Just because maybe you were a specific type of person in high school doesn't mean you have to be that same person in college. I guess a way to relate that to what we've talked about in the podcast so far is that I didn't know anything about communication systems for our Maseeh Entrepreneurship competition project, but that didn't mean I couldn't learn. That didn't mean I couldn't just go for it and talk to as many people as I could and Google as many things as I could and figure it out. So I think it's important just to remember that just because you haven't had experience with something in the past doesn't mean you can't get experience with it. And it doesn't mean it can't be something you really love or you find really interesting. So I guess to sum that up, don't say no. If you think something's exciting and cool, just go for it. Don't hold yourself back.
While Marlink deals with promoting the discovery of an underwater world, let's hear from Nash and his team's invention, which combined data analytics and a physical brace to predict the onset of muscular degenerative illnesses.
Hi everyone, my name's Nash. I'm a biomedical engineering student. I'm a senior here at USC, and I'm from Thousand Oaks.
Nash started his own project, MuscleMeter, with a group of biomedical engineering students. So can you tell us a little bit about your project, where it kind of started, what you kind of done throughout the semester, and where you hope to take it?
Yeah, so our project was kind of the brainchild during our senior design class. And so our group we're spitballing a few ideas, and we came upon this idea. We really liked this idea of measuring neuromuscular weaknesses and seeing if we can track progression of it over time, and building a device that can measure the relevant muscle and movements for these patients. And so through the design process and the conceptualizing process of our project, we talked to several different labs. We talked to a few labs in the BME building and a couple in different engineering buildings around here, as well as several physicians at the medical school. And we kind of came upon these set of measurements we wanted to measure. So we wanted to measure quad extension and flexion because a lot of muscular degenerative diseases begin in the legs, and also shoulder internal and external rotation, because we also wanted a landmark measurement in the upper body to measure. And then the next step kind of came how do we design something? So there's a couple of different design processes we came about during the whole process of this. Mm-hmm. So I use the word process a lot.
No, you're totally fine.
And so at first we were kind of thinking about maybe we can build a chair for this patient to sit in, but the more we talked to people, we realized that would be kind of just not ergonomically friendly. A lot of doctors wouldn't want to use a big chair. Patients wouldn't really want to use it, and it just was too bulky and not feasible to construct. So we came upon this kind of leg and arm brace that we would wrap around this person's leg, and it would immobilize their leg and allow them to isometrically press against these force sensors. So basically the measurements we're getting is maximum isometric voluntary muscle contraction. It's kind of a mouthful. Mm-hmm. But basically it's how hard they can press against something without moving. So imagine pressing against a wall. So that's the measurements we're getting.
You built a physical prototype through this challenge. Can you describe a little bit about it? What was the process of? Did you have any advisors that you worked along with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we talked to a couple people, again, like I mentioned before, in a couple of the BME labs, particularly the neuromuscular labs, or muscular dystrophy labs, and they also mentioned to us, again, the biggest, the most important aspects that we need to measure. And also they gave us some pretty useful advice in terms of what the goals we're trying to achieve, because I think as engineers a lot of the times we kind of get pigeonholed into this idea where, hey, there's something I can build, I'm gonna build it, but they really made us wonder why we're building this, right? Mm-hmm. And so our product isn't necessarily a diagnostic tool, it's not a treatment tool, but again, like we're saying, it's a measurement tool, so it's very useful in things like research, for example. There's a paper we actually read when coming up with this idea for this project. It was an ALS study. And so they were trying to test this novel treatment for ALS, and they had the same thing. They were measuring maximum voluntary isometric muscular contraction. I need to think, what's the abbreviation? MVIC.
Okay, perfect.
So they're trying to measure that. And they actually had built this big brace that kind of surrounded the whole patient, and the patient would lay on this bed. It was this really bulky and kind of like scary thing. It looked kind of like a medieval torture device almost, and it was used solely for research. And they were measuring again after each treatment. They'd measure the maximal isometric contraction of the muscles and plot it and see if again the patient had positive progression or like regression with their disease. And so that was like the main paper we had that we read to get this idea. And so we kind of wanted to build like a smaller version of it that'd be more utilized and maybe one day be useful in like a clinic, for example. So we kind of scaled it down, measuring just leg quad extension and flexion and shoulder internal and external rotation. And so I guess how the project works is a patient sits on a metal plate, and this metal plate immobilizes the whole device. And then there's a metal bar that goes down their leg, and by their ankle there's a metal brace that wraps around it. Sorry, it's kind of difficult to describe it. And so the patient will then be instructed to press against it and flex their quad and retract their quad leg again, and as hard as they can, right? So you can get these maximal measurements. And same thing again. There's another brace that goes around their wrist, and they keep their elbow rooted on the elbow pad, and they internally and externally rotate their shoulder. And it's the measurement is taken by the force their wrists press against these braces. So I'm doing all these hand motions, but I realize no one can see it. And yeah, so that's just one part of it. That's just the physical part of our product. But I think where our device really shines is the software part of it as well. So not only can it just measure it, but it also can plot it over time. So physicians, for example, can see sessions over time on like a nice, neat graph to see how patients, again, progress or regress over time. And also, alongside those like session-by-session measurements, there's also a real-time measurement that patients can see. Because we noticed when reading the papers and also when we were testing ourselves and when we were talking to physicians that when they press against these force sensors, there's sort of this impulse followed by like a plateau phase followed by a fatigue phase. Mm-hmm. And so the physician can see this shape of this graph as well. And that may also give them insight, again, into the certain type of muscular disease they're dealing with. Obviously, like, we're not physicians, but we believe that this data itself will be useful to them to see like hard numbers and like graphs showing what's actually going on with the muscles and how they're contracting.
And what are some of the largest diseases that could be used to this program, along with the physical project, can be used to detect later on?
Like I mentioned before, like in terms of research, ALS, right? It can just research therapies and any other muscular dystrophies, because most muscular dystrophies don't really have any cure. It's just preventative measures and maybe palliative measures that you can try to ease and slow down the progression of it. And in terms of like diagnostics, like, we're not sure, but we just have this data here. Yeah. It's like not like over the way and cluttering. It's just it's like nice and neat, like displaying two graphs. So we have like one graph showing the real time muscular contraction and one graph showing the over time, session by session. Mm-hmm. Another thing our product does also is compares muscular contraction to the mean. So it's a really good way because we have all this data available, and so we're trying to use this data to help physicians make more informed decisions / track over time. So we want to collect data of healthy patients and their contractions, different age groups, different genders, and to see, again, like, how their like the normalized data is, and compare patient data to the mean and see if they're getting closer or further away from it. So yeah, it's a kind of a lot, but hopefully these tools the physician can use to make better treatments. Because, for example, if they're administering a treatment, some drugs, right, have like pretty harmful side effects, and they could perhaps lower the dosage of it if they see that a lower dosage is giving the same effect as a higher dosage, and prevent some of these harmful side effects. That's one example that our device can be used for. And I think one question we're trying to figure out is like, why, say, for example, why wouldn't we use EMG? Because EMGs are also useful in determining muscular contraction. But the issue with EMG is a lot of hospitals and clinics, like, it's sort of invasive because not all of them have electrodes. Some of them are needles that you have to stick into the muscle. And many patients just are uncomfortable with that. And second, there's a lot of noise that comes with EMG, just the electrodes. It could be like just some signal that it could be picking up, as well as the fact that our coupled with the software, like EMG doesn't have this software capability that ours does to, again, show session by session, as well as comparisons to the standard population.
And for the prospective students that are listening to this, and also for myself, could you explain what EMG is and what it does?
Oh yeah, so EMG is basically long story short, they place electrodes on your skin, either with needles or these sticky electrode pads, and they usually measure like on a muscle, and then they have the patient contract, and they can measure the muscular contraction like by the electrical impulse of it, and just depending on how big the impulse is, they can see like if there's any like weakness or issues with that.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing. And I guess this project directly really ties into your major, along with the other group members that you were with. Could you just talk about how you picked your major of biomedical engineering from the get-go?
Yeah. So it's actually pretty interesting because when I came into USC, I wasn't actually originally biomedical engineering. I was a neuroscience major. And again, classes are really interesting, but as I looked further down my course plan, I realized some of the classes aren't really what I wanted to do. And I looked at the BME course plan, and like, for one, like I love math, right? And like engineering is like a lot of math, like when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
And also some of the classes we're taking have really practical applications, and a lot of the things we're learning, we get to apply it instead of just memorizing notes on a page. And so, for example, like one class we took, medical devices, I took it my junior year. That class is really interesting because we actually built an EMG, and we actually built a blood pressure cuff, and seeing like actual like how like the hardware and software comes together in building these medical devices is really interesting. And I was able to take those skills I learned from there and take it to senior design, which I took a year later. So I think it's really cool to see these classes build upon each other and these skills we're learning actually be relevant later on in other classes.
Yeah, and that senior project class, could you talk a little bit more about just the whole process of the semester, along with some of the other projects that you saw from other groups? I know Rhea did a project called Tulip. That was really cool. But yeah, could you just speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the senior design class is really cool because we spend a lot of time on the conceptualizing phase of it. So the professor really makes sure that like we have our idea down and we've hashed out all like the issues with it. So we go through stages like different designs of our project, rating pros and cons of it, and a lot of very highly detailing out the process of it before we actually start building it. And then alongside that, we're like in the lab learning how to use LabVIEW, which is like the program we're using to code it. And also, again, like doing a lot of stuff with circuits. So for people who haven't taken the medical devices class, they're getting caught up to speed on how to use like how circuits work for the purposes of the project. So again, we spent a lot of time on the conceptualizing phase, and then after that, it's just you just go into lab whenever you need to and work on the project. And I saw a lot of really cool projects in the class. So like Rhea, her project was really cool, but she wasn't in my lab section. But some cool projects I saw in my lab section. One group built this infrared device to image veins. And so basically what happens is like a lot of times when like learning to like do venous puncture, like with people who like don't have clearly visible veins, they can miss a lot and like prick people and miss the vein. So they had this device that like measured IR, and like I forgot what they did, but something with the hemoglobin and like absorbing like the signals. But they were able to like image the veins like non-invasively, which is really interesting, and it could be used for training purposes as well as maybe in the future apply to like physicians in real time.
So for you and your group of biomedical engineering students, you took this project that you started in your senior design project, and then you took it to the MEPC challenge. Now could you talk a little bit more about the whole structure of that MEPC, what the application process was like, what the training was like, what you're currently working on now, and what your hopes are for the future?
Yeah. So the MEPC, like one reason I just want to preface like why we went for it is because with the senior design project, since we took it first semester, a lot of this project ended up just being like abandoned second semester because like we're not taking that class anymore, and we kind of like really like enjoyed our project and we wanted to go further with it. So we heard about this MEPC thing, and the application process, basically they want you to really think more about your device, not as just a device but as a product you're trying to market to a consumer, right? So you describe your device in the application and obviously what it is, but then they ask like who are your stakeholders, like who would your primary stakeholders be, who would your customers be, and it kind of made us think a lot about it. So we're thinking like insurance companies would probably be like a big stakeholder, physicians too, same with the customer, physicians too, as well as the patient. And it kind of had us think more about like, oh, like these are our customers, these are our stakeholders, like how could we change it to be more appealing to them? Because obviously we can build this kind of big bulky device that works, but it's not really consumer friendly, right? So it's a whole another ball game, which is like a lot of engineers, especially in that class, we're not used to thinking about that. Because again, as I mentioned, I think early in the podcast, is like we can build this and measure something, and so like let's just build it. But why are we doing this? And so MEPC kind of forced us to think about the why behind our project, the why we're doing this, and what can it do for people. And so the process, again, I mentioned like the application process, and throughout the whole MEPC thing, we have different workshops where we learn about how to talk to customers. For example, we also get paired with a mentor, and that mentor is super useful. We've actually met with our mentor, MEPC mentor, like quite a few times. He kind of has a lot of professional contacts he can give us, as well as a lot of experience in the market. He's had like 3 or 4 startups on his own, and so he just knows like how this whole process goes. And so he keeps us up to date as well, and bounces ideas off of us of what we can do to better our project.
Yeah. Did you, when you made that transition from neuroscience to biomedical engineering, did you ever think that you would get to this stage where you'd be like creating a device that could have just real impact on people out in the real world while you're still at USC? Not
really. Like I think a main reason I switched to BME is like I just enjoy the curriculum more, but I didn't think that it leads to this where I could potentially have like a bigger impact further than like college and everything, further than like what I could see in my like direct activity space. Yeah, it's actually really cool to be doing this.
Yeah, and do you have plans to pursue biomedical engineering or some medical field after college?
So like I said, I want to eventually become a physician, but I think the skills that like biomedical engineering has given me in terms of just like the way I think is a lot different than I would have gotten with like just a regular like neuroscience or any other pre-med like major education. And also I think it just gives me a lot of insight into like what I'm actually doing, because like I've built all these devices that hopefully I'll be one day using, right? Like I know like the stuff behind it. I know like what like the other side of it. And so I think it's just a lot of useful knowledge in terms of like what I need for my future career.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And for our final question of the podcast, so we have a lot of prospective students listening, along with current students listening to this podcast, just kind of hearing about news going around Viterbi. So what is a piece of advice that you would give to anyone that's listening, whether they're currently applying into USC, hopeful for their future, hopeful for getting into biomedical engineering and starting to pursue these entrepreneurship challenges, or just any students that's just listening interested?
Yeah. I guess in terms of like USC just being a student, I think just always go after like any opportunity. Like I say, like the MEPC, we kind of just saw it and we're like, it seems kind of cool. Like we don't really know where this is going, but we know like we want to continue with our project, and so we just kind of went for it. And so I could say just go for it. Like if you see anything like that, and also just like another piece of general advice I'd say is I know I've talked a lot about engineering stuff I'm doing and like all these classes and all this entrepreneurship thing, but I think it's really important to find something outside of like your major that you can really be passionate about, right? So like maybe you can like join a dance team or something. Like I for me, for example, right, I joined the powerlifting team here, and like doing club sports too is like a really cool thing. Or just find something that you're really passionate about that's like outside your major that kind of helps keep you sane like during this whole process, because it's like it's a tough process, but you want to enjoy it while you're doing it.
Exactly. And we're just trying to enjoy our last semester, you know.
Exactly.
Alrighty, so yeah, those are all our questions. Nash, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So that about wraps up this Viterbi Life episode. Thanks so much for joining us. If you haven't already, follow us on SoundCloud, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review, and as always, fight on.